Grand Theft Auto V is quite possibly one of the biggest video games of all time. It's sold over 70 million copies worldwide, so even if you haven't played the game, it's a safe bet that you've at least heard of it. Developed by Rockstar North and released in late 2013, the game follows the story of three characters who exist on the fictional island of San Andreas, which is based on the real-world location surrounding Los Angeles, California. Grand Theft Auto V is not only one of the biggest selling games in history, it's also one of the biggest games in its ambition and scope. The island of San Andreas is huge, insanely comprehensive, and constantly evolving along with the plot. The game world has a massive amount of detail. Not only is there a dynamic day and night cycle, but also a dynamic news cycle. The weather changes as you play, there's a wide variety of wildlife, and a complete working transit system. There's even an in-game version of the internet where characters react to events on social media. The game references and makes fun of just about every aspect of pop culture, and even real life in some cases. It's the kind of game you can play several times and still notice little nuances you might not have caught the first few times around. Most of these are butt or penis jokes or obscure nods to other media, but among the sea of references, some players have noticed some unusual details and began connecting dots. We call these players mystery hunters, and they're attempting to solve one of gaming's biggest ongoing mysteries. So let's take a closer look and attempt to puzzle together the cryptic clues of the Chiliad Mystery. Let's start at the beginning. Well, technically it's the end, but the first major clue we received is the Chiliad mural itself. Named after its location, Mount Chiliad, which is based on the real-life location of Mount Shasta in Northern California. The mural depicts a similar mountain surrounded by thunder, with a progression which seems to flow from top to bottom, or vice versa. Maybe it flows sideways, we don't really know for sure. There are a number of boxes containing X's. On the bottom row are boxes containing a UFO, a cracked egg, and a man with a jetpack. So, what does it mean? There have been many interpretations of this mural. Some think it's a literal representation of the mountain, and that the mystery has been solved with the discovery of nearby glyphs on the mountain. Some feel it needs to be reshaped and overlaid onto a map of the island. Others feel it may be a symbolic representation of the decisions that the player makes throughout the game. It could just be Rockstar trolling the masses. They do that sometimes. We do have some things to work with, however. Almost immediately after the game's release, players did indeed discover the previously mentioned glyphs, which led us to find a UFO in-game. Actually a bunch of UFOs. One of which spawns directly behind where the mural is housed, but only at 3 AM during a rainstorm after gaining 100% completion. There's another above an Area 51 type military base which shines a beam down at 3 AM after 100%. Yet another one above a hippie camp after 100%, and a sunken one on the ocean floor which you can see at all times. These UFOs are also tied to a reference of the WOW signal in-game. The WOW signal was a real-world transmission from an unknown origin in space discovered by the SETI program in the 70s. In-game instances of hearing the signal mirror the locations of the UFOs that we can observe. A final UFO is referenced in a late-game mission from a character named Omega as having been destroyed sometime before or during the game's events. The player is tasked to gather parts to repair the ship and is rewarded with a unique Space Docker vehicle. There are also a few fake UFOs elsewhere on the game map. Oh, well, mystery solved then, right? We found the glyphs that led us to the UFOs. Some people think that's as far as it goes, but depending on who you ask, this is just where the trail begins. While the Omega UFO is indeed tied to a special vehicle reward which is decidedly not a UFO, the others are just kinda there. Teasing really cool vehicles like UFOs and jetpacks that you can't use in a game like Grand Theft Auto V as final rewards is very unsatisfying, so many are led to believe that there is indeed more to this mystery, leading to a large amount of online speculation and debate. So, deeper into the rabbit hole we go. Who placed the mural there? Well, obviously a Rockstar employee, but in canon there's a few possibilities. Hippies, Omega, the government, cultists, aliens, some form of pseudo-deity, it's really anyone's guess. So, let's go back to the beginning again, the actual beginning this time, to try to decipher every element at play. Years before Grand Theft Auto V was released, the island of San Andreas was represented in the game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. The jetpack became a large element of the plot of that game when the main protagonist, Carl Johnson, infiltrated a military base and escaped with the prototype. The 2004 game also had a cult following of players dedicated to tracking down paranormal phenomenon, such as Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, and even, UFOs. None of those things were confirmed in that game, but players still had fun floating around on their jetpacks searching for something elusive. Grand Theft Auto V begins with the prologue. Taking place in 2004, we follow 3 bank robbers named Michael, Trevor, and Brad as they hit a bank in a location named North Yankton. It's worth note that the game only allows the player brief tiny glimpses of North Yankton throughout the game, mostly as flashbacks during missions. While the Grand Theft Auto series is known for offering the player freedom to play how they choose, immediately the player is forced to make decisions they may not otherwise make. The player is forced to threaten people and kill a guard in order to advance. This teaches us some of the basic gameplay mechanics, but forces us into the role of a murderer. This might seem like a no-brainer in a game series with violence as a theme, but for reasons we'll cover later, this is an extremely important moment relating to one of the biggest theories surrounding the mystery. It's also worth noting that the player is often rewarded for going off the beaten path. In this introductory mission alone, there's a secret surveillance room, a frozen alien, and a spiderweb that ties into a later aspect of the mystery that we'll discuss later. Of course, seeing these often results in failing the mission at hand, so it seems like trying to break the game by seeking out alternatives to missions is something important overall. Let's keep this in mind for later. Brad is killed, Michael is shot, and Trevor escapes into the snowy abyss. We're shown a funeral for Michael as he looks on from a distance, and the game begins. We jump to 2013 and a cutscene between the game's first main character Michael and his psychiatrist Dr. Friedlander where phrenology is subtly referenced. Basically, it's a concept from the 1800s that posits that different parts of the brain handle different functions with very simplified definitions. So a certain part of your brain handles your ability to color inside the lines, and another handles your mirthfulness and can be measured by the shape of your skull. Again, this might seem like a trivial reference, but jumping ahead to after the credits roll on the story mode, each player receives a psych report from the doctor. It breaks down the character's actions, including but not limited to playtime, family ties, NPCs killed, and how good you are at yoga. It's also worth noting that the player can check in and receive advice from the doctor from time to time throughout the story. After the session, Michael encounters the second character, Franklin, who along with his accomplice Lamar are in the process of repossessing a car for a shady dealer named Simeon. The player is then allowed to explore the sandbox as Franklin, and what happens from there on strongly relies on the player. This is where one of the most complex theories regarding this mystery lies, the karma theory. The plot follows Michael, who's now a retired career criminal in witness protection while struggling with family drama and a midlife crisis. When he meets Franklin again, the two form a working relationship which leads down a road of violence and crime, which draws the attention of the third character, Trevor. The three are drawn into many shady dealings among the elaborate and vastly detailed backdrop of San Andreas. Knowing that the game is always watching and judging the player's actions, the basic premise of the karma theory is that the player must complete the story mode while making certain moral choices when presented. The main problem being not knowing what those choices are exactly. There are a lot of decisions the player can make. Most apparently throughout the game at specific plot points or during random encounters, the player is presented with the option to kill characters who may or may not have wronged them, allowing the story and game world to play out slightly differently depending on the choices made. The option and alternatives aren't just related to murder, however. Simple details like getting a haircut early on as Franklin subtly changes dialogue with his friend Lamar in one of the early missions. Michael is often presented with optional missions to help his family, and Trevor has the option to sell hitchhikers to a local cult. These are just a few examples of the obvious choices the player is given throughout the game. Some are a lot more obscure, like paying tens of thousands of in-game dollars to join an optional pyramid scheme / religion known as Epsilonism, which according to the online elements of the game is the one true religion. Make of that what you will. Without spoiling how the game ends, let's just say it all boils down to one really important decision, A, B, or C. For reasons we're going to skip over, most players choose option C and don't often put too much thought into the first two options at all. Some proponents of the karma theory believe that the mural on top of Mount Chiliad may be a representation or a guide of some sort to these choices, with the X's being incorrect decisions based on the moral of whomever placed the mural there in the first place. It's an interesting thought, but good luck proving or disproving something that wide-reaching as a whole. Let's see what other theories we have to work with. When asked his interpretation of the mural, popular mystery-related YouTuber Wizzle had this to say.
I just think that all of the signs and symbols what are on the mural can be found somewhere in the game, and that there somehow is a connection between all of these, symbols. So, just giving an example, on the mural you have the three main boxes, the UFO, the crack deck, and the jetpack. We have already found the UFO or UFOs in the game, meaning we found the first box already, but we haven't found the other two boxes and the rest of the mural yet. So my guess is, if we find all what is displayed on the mural, that we need to find the triggers, do the steps in order, and work ourselves to the end of this massive Easter egg.
Veteran codewalker Vertigo, otherwise known as the Chiliad Mythbuster, had a similar but slightly more detailed take.
I don't know what the lines mean. I'm not even going to attempt to do the lines. I think many people have tried to overlay the lines on certain things and they've just never matched up. And anything abstract like missions or time frames or anything like that, they've all kind of fallen flat because if you have a theory that actually works, then we would see something out of it. And the lines are just kind of out there. As far as the X's, I think that's pretty straightforward, actually. We have exactly 5 glyphs on the mountain. We have exactly 5 X's on the mural. The mural is basically a map of the mountain. So I do believe that those X's are on the mural. And the reason I believe that is because we wouldn't have any other way to figure out where those were otherwise. Like, there's no other hints in the game that those glyphs are where they are. That's the only thing we have that says search the rest of the mountain. So yeah, outside of other clues, there's just nothing else telling us that. And then, of course, other people have said, oh, well, it's another mountain entirely, but that's really, really hard to argue when we have that red mark underneath the top platform and the red mark at the top of the other platform in the mural. So I do think it's Chiliad. I do think the X's are the glyphs. And as far as the rewards, it's kind of a toss-up.
When contacted for confirmation or denial of any of this, the Rockstar tech support line remained pretty tight-lipped.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to confirm nor deny that. There really isn't any information on it. I'm not too sure. I know there's a lot of speculation on, Easter eggs and things of that nature. But here at Rockstar Technical Support, like I said, our goal is to listen to technical issues. I don't really have any information regarding the Mount Chiliad Mystery and things like that.
No surprises there. It seems the consensus is that players feel that there is more to it, but aren't entirely sure where to look, and are unsure if it's a matter of waiting for an update from Rockstar to continue the mystery. Most of the major breakthroughs in this mystery have come through the efforts of file hunters who have worked tirelessly to uncover the secrets hidden behind the game's code in an effort to get to the bottom of this mystery and to better understand the complex world that Rockstar has created. These hunters are known as codewalkers and come from a wide variety of backgrounds. So far, their combined efforts have uncovered quite a few interesting finds: an alien-looking egg model file, a heads-up display for a UFO, and many unused areas and mysterious triggers in the code happening behind the scenes as we play the game. It's worth noting that file hunters have revealed references to the jetpack even in the earliest versions of the code.
We have noted that there is some code in the older versions of the game that actually has the jetpack named, and we had a tester who was working on trying to replace the jetpack with the parachute to see what it would do in game, and the character just went into a T-pose and fell through the world.
One of the more interesting recent discoveries made by this kind of investigation comes in the form of a cryptic clue embedded in the code in the new generation releases of the game. He was wrong to start his hunt on a Tuesday. Admittedly not much to work with, but from that hint players assembled to frame the in-game search differently, which eventually led to the discovery of a secret playable Bigfoot character, which further led to a playable Teen Wolf character. Oh Rockstar, your love of the 80s is very cute, but the players won't be satisfied until they have that flyable UFO or jetpack.
Well, I mean, it would be kind of odd if you didn't say that there would be a jetpack, because I think that's the biggest thing that everybody's looking for. My personal belief is yes, there is still a mystery to be solved, because we find things even sometimes on a daily basis anymore that seem innocent, but then you go looking through files and you go, well, that's weird and not really connected to anything, or we don't really have solid answers for a lot of the oddities that we've had. But it seems like now on a weekly basis we're at least finding some answers to those as we go. So yes, there's definitely more to solve here, and I think until we have some sort of tangible reward, that nobody's going to stop searching, even if somebody came and said no, there's nothing there, because that's just how dedicated everybody is at solving this.
The search has become such a phenomenon that players flock by the tens of thousands to investigators like Whizzle to hear various theories or news on the progression of the mystery, and have done so pretty consistently over the past few years.
I think it's very important to search and share information as a community, so as one. The fact that we've been searching for 3 years now says enough about the size of this mystery, I think. And yeah, then it's just a must to work together. No one can solve this mystery on its own.
With a game as deeply detailed as Grand Theft Auto V, and from what's been solved so far, the only certainty is that just about anything is possible. There are a lot of leads still being followed up on, and maybe some unrelated Easter eggs or red herrings, but there are lots of investigation methods at play, and just about every aspect of the game is being put under the microscope. So let's talk about some of the most interesting mystery-related locations and leads. The first major unresolved hint that players have was discovered directly after the game's release. It's a sign in front of a burger joint with what appears to be a cipher. The game sometimes does use gibberish to fill text, mostly lorem ipsum however, and this seems to be an intentional hint. Located not far from the mural itself and also near a broken egg clock, codewalkers have determined that the numbers and letters on the sign are much like similar signs in the real world, and that the texture file is not of the message as a whole, but a spread of alphanumeric characters, which means the designer intentionally placed each character with an intention. While the code was passed on to cipher experts all over the internet, no solution has been found as of yet. This may be key to crack the whole thing, and it's been right in front of our eyes, taunting us the whole time. Or it could just be Rockstar trolling the masses. They do that sometimes. In a similar vein, there are also strange undeciphered highway numbers and symbols discovered only to exist on next-gen releases.
I do think the highway numbers are important. The problem is the highway numbers also weren't there in the older versions of the game. Since they were added in next-gen, you have to assume they're next-gen. But if you look at something like the hamburger sign fades when you go into low graphics, meaning that people on low graphic PCs couldn't see it. Whereas the highway sign does not change in graphics at all. It's one solid texture, which means it was meant to be seen.
Early on, players pointed out what appears to be a very similar symbol to the jetpack depicted on the mural at the altruist camp where Trevor sells the hitchhikers. To what end is still unsure, but there's also a sealed crate which spawns at the end of the mission at that location, which has been the subject of a lot of code walking and speculation linking it to the events of a previous game in the series, but with no promising results. Blurring the line between another lead and possibly cut content, there's a few unused and mysterious phone numbers in the game. Some relate to characters not met in the storyline, like Kyle Slater, a member of the military whose voicemail is reachable in-game, and he seems to be linked to an undiscovered random mission or event. It's very possible that this is simply cut content acting as a red herring, but it's a lead we've yet to completely eliminate as a possibility. There's also the black cell phone number. When dialed, this number triggers an overhead explosion and changes the player's cell phone to a black model. To what end and what this otherwise changes or triggers is still unclear. It could just be a simple cultural reference, cut content, or maybe just another piece of the overall greater puzzle. Another semi-unresolved hint is that of the rare appearance of spiderwebs in various places in the game under certain conditions. Codewalking revealed these to be static meshes with no obvious triggers attached, so possibly a red herring or something that works in a way that we're not aware of yet, but these show up in some suspicious, seemingly important places and only under certain conditions, which matches the profile of previous clues which have led to something solid. The water texture on the Maze Bank fountain is odd to say the least. Efforts to decipher any kind of message out of it have come up dry. There are a few sound-related ones in addition to the previously mentioned WoW signal. If you attack the tower near the Rebel radio station, it will trigger an SOS signal in Morse code. Morse code is also heard at the underwater hatch referencing Lost in Grand Theft Auto 4, translating to, "Hey, you never call, how'd you fancy going bowling?" making fun of Nico's cousin Roman, who was notorious for harassing players to hang out in the previous game. Players have also been reporting strange sewer noises like a heartbeat and also animal-like sounds, though a source has been not found for either. Sounds kinda Ratmanish. The physics of Grand Theft Auto 5 aren't to be overlooked either. The player can cause rock slides and water accumulates and forms rivers as it flows down mountains into storm drains. We could very well be looking at some kind of physics puzzle as their solution, or an astrophysics puzzle. At the Galileo Observatory, which is based on the real-life Griffith Observatory, there are a number of interesting details that stand out. Firstly, the real-life observatory has a number of lawn features such as a model solar system built into the grounds. In-game, only the planetary line for Uranus is depicted. Man, that's a lot of research just for a butt joke, but maybe there's more to it. The observatory has a few other interesting elements, such as a cracked 3D model, indicating that there may be a mission of some kind or some kind of shenanigans going on that we're not aware of. These are just a handful of the mystery-related leads and locations. We're barely scratching the surface here. Weasel has this to say about promising leads.
Honestly, I don't think there is just one big lead that we have come across. I think a couple of leads together is a promising lead, and a couple of leads together is, for example, the jetpack logo, what is displayed on the rock in the Eltrus camp, or the UFOs we have found in the game, or the secret Epsilon missions, or, for example, that I think the Maze Bank fountain is the cracked egg, or has something to do with the cracked egg, and not to forget the alien egg, the Space Docker, and Omega.
Vertigo has this to say on promising leads.
I would have to say the best and most promising lead right now is probably the missing Omega dialogue. Because and this is actually going to be in my next video, so that'll be fantastic to look at. But we went through all the subtitle files for Omega, and we marked out which ones were used in game in his missions or used as little quips. Like when you start or end a mission, you know, if you stand around, that character talks back to you for a minute. like kind of tries to shoo you away, like, hey, I need to unload in the game, so you need to scatter. We found all that audio, and all of it has a subtitle file and an audio, except for a select few lines in the subtitle file that allude to not only there being an Omega mission, but there being an Omega mission after the other two missions. There's specifically a line of dialogue that he says at the very end of the mission that says, "See you on the other side, brother." And one of the lines in the missing dialogue that we can't find audio for says, "I thought I'd see you on the other side." And that line wouldn't make any sense had we not heard the first one.
Currently, the search continues. Players like Vertigo continue to search the files for clues. Members of the media like Wizzle continue to cover leads and discuss possibilities. As of the time of this video, a large-scale effort spearheaded by GTAforum and Reddit user Tadden to organize a grid-based search of the game map to uncover any potential overlooked leads is underway. Tadden is credited with cracking some of the early Easter eggs related to the Infinite 8 murders and decrypting the underwater hatch Morse code. When reached out for comment on how close he feels we are to solving anything, he quoted this, quote, "I think at this moment in the hunt, we're at a point where we need a nudge from Rockstar or more people helping us dig through the game files for answers. There doesn't seem to be much left to discover in-game, and the vast majority of new finds have already been found or discussed previously, or they don't appear to be directly related to the mystery." End quote. Blunts Are Best, the publisher of the mystery megathread on Reddit, which was used extensively in the making of this video, had this advice for new hunters.
I recommend trying to do a little bit of catch-up before attempting to solve the mystery. I made the megathread so people would get a better understanding of where the community overall stands and a little bit of what we've been through the last 3 years. I know it seems a bit overwhelming, but that's exactly what this mystery is. My best advice for new hunters would be to not listen to anybody that claims that they actually solved the mystery. Nobody has solved the mystery, they're just sticking to the interpretation they like the most. Do your own research and actually decide for yourself what the mural is supposed to mean.
Avisterd, a longtime mystery hunter, had this to add, quote, "Most people who join the mystery by now are overwhelmed by all of it, thinking that most things are dead ends such as the spiderweb on Chiliad. My advice is to never keep a certain mindset, always think in different ways. To not think of the Codewalkers as the head people who know everything, there's always room for more searching everywhere, even in the original things we found in the beginning." End quote. So like any good mystery, the more we discover, the deeper the rabbit hole goes. Questions answered lead to more questions. Many believe the truth is out there, but are unsure where to go from here. What's the next step? Is there a jetpack waiting at the end of this? Is it possible that we might be missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? Is it just Rockstar trolling the masses? They do that sometimes. No one knows for sure except a handful of Rockstar developers, but maybe someday, someone will solve the Chiliad mystery.